I adore this chapter because it opens up so many doors, so many different paths that we can take towards what seems like the ending of the story. How do we move forward with Denji? How do we move forward with Asa? How do we figure out this stuck between rock and hard place situation? It seems almost impossible, right? The further we go into it, the more complicated it becomes, but we start to open up doors, and Fujimoto is playing a very funny game, so much so that it is unpredictable, which is kind of normal for Fujimoto's stories, but now more than ever, we don't know where to go. What do we even do? Even though we have a direction, how do we even comprehend how to get there? I really enjoy what he's currently doing. Also, if you enjoy the video and find yourself coming back on the regular, why not leave a like and subscribe? We are currently stuck between a rock and a hard place. We don't really have anywhere to go. We can't really do anything about Yoru because of all the innocent people that she's technically contracted with to avoid death, etc. We can't really get rid of death because that's going to ruin something else. So how do we save Asa? And at the same time this massive fight is going on, we're having this internal dialogue between Asa and Denji, which I really like. There is some oddities within here, but nothing that I think breaks the entirety of the story or even characters. I guess more so personal preference. I would like to see Denji uplift Asa to a certain extent so she can take the reins herself. I think Asa is so consistent with devouring her self-worth throughout the entirety of the story that eventually it would be nice to see her conquer her inner demons. Does that make sense? I really want her to fulfill that sense of purpose for herself, for the betterment of herself. The great thing about that is that if she can't get to that point on her own, which seems very difficult right now, Denji is currently filling that void, which for the first time I think is really respectable from him. He doesn't do this often. He doesn't really have, I guess, a motive to accomplish this. And even if he does do it, it could be by accident or just his own roundabout example of it. The way he's doing it now, however, seems incredibly purposeful, but it's also a joint effort. It's Denji's own interpretations with what he understands and what he's gone through, but also a bit of Pochita, a message from Pochita to Denji to relay to Asa. That combination and effort, I think, works really well. Unfortunately, it does kind of seem like you're speeding through a lot of Denji's own personal growth, but I think we have to understand that right now we're in a juggling act. We can't spend too much time with Denji or Asa, we can't spend too much time outside either. There's just so much going on that we really have to back and forth ping pong it to balance everything out. Some things are going to be flown through, other things are going to be highlighted. A matter of importance, so to speak. In saying that, I would like to see Asa take that step for her own self-discovery and journey, which I think she is almost there. It's like right on that line of making that jump and choice. She just needs that extra little bit of support, which is where Denji really comes in clutch. The one thing that she's been hoping for, looking for, and honestly pleading for is that helping hand. Even if it's not directly a helping hand, knowing that you're not alone in this situation, you're not isolated from everything, you're not the only one going through it, can be enough support and help in itself. Denji and Asa are kind of in the exact same situation, but their experiences obviously differ. However, I find it brilliant that Denji kind of puts himself on the level of Asa Mitaka, sharing their experiences, saying we and us together, not leaving her alone. Mind you, this support, this aid, this help comes right after Asa made this very gut-wrenching decision to save him, to give up her own life, to be self-sacrificial to save Denji. And I think that prior showcase of the character is both indicative to how Asa operates, showing how emotionally fueled she can be, but also suffering from that trauma and all of that blame that she puts onto herself. It is part core characteristic, part self-destructive. In a perfect world, if you took away the self-destructive nature of that Asa Mitaka, that type of dedication and commitment to another being is so honorable. It's powerful to make that decision. Because that self-destructiveness is there, it comes as guilt and trauma and giving up and really not being able to continue moving forward or see a better way out. so it's a detriment, so it tails or spirals off into obscurity, never to really be fixed. Again, this is where I would like to see Asa pick up herself to really conquer her own demons, which in this case is Yoru. I don't know how we get there, but I'm very much okay with Denji giving her that support, both directly, emotionally, contextually, just knowing that she isn't alone in this. That in itself is powerful enough. Denji doesn't really work as a savior hero, someone to pick up all the pieces and make everything perfect. He's just doing what he thinks is right, and as rough and rigid and all over the place that idea may be, as long as he's able to do what he's setting out to do, his intention is usually in the right place. Funny enough, exactly like Asa Mitaka. So the outcome that we have currently is this beautiful visualization of a new world. And it's reiterated by Pochita, which I find interesting. Our dream is to lead a normal life. I'm supposed to choose between Yoru's world or Death's world, but we couldn't be able to lead a normal life in either one. Pochita is saying, let's make our own world. And I truly appreciate how this is portrayed. Denji is saying all of this stuff from Pochita as a child, which gives you a different perspective of Denji's trauma and his experiences and self-internalization, blah, 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 right? The stuff that we know. But when Pochita phrases, let's make our own new world, Asa's mind is open to the idea, and then adult Denji, the real Denji that we know, current, directly invites Asa into their world. Not my world, not his world, not Pochita's world, our world. And he really gets on the exact same level as her. She's in denial. She doesn't think she can do this, and that's the spiraling into obscurity. She thinks it's hopeless, but Denji is giving her a hand, showing that she isn't alone, and that is so powerful in its own right. We just need to put ourselves in Asa's shoes. She's been alone for a very long time. She has never been able to deal with a lot of the guilt and the trauma, especially the stuff with her father and her mother, and then obviously the stuff with Yuko and Yoru. There's so much that she can't offload. Someone is reaching out her hand so earnestly, so openly. Of course, that is going to influence you, but it's going to make you feel safe. And for the first time, perhaps that's what she is feeling. Safe. Not in like a lovey-dovey prince in shining armor, but a genuine connection with no ulterior motive, so they can both be happy. The question is, what is their own world? What does a brand new world that is theirs actually look like? To understand this, we have to go to the end half of the chapter. Pochita manages to kill Death. Yoru saves her. Death is grateful. Yoru is able to jump onto that and turn her into a weapon. But before she can finish, Pochita devours her and erases her out the story. There's a really small but great way that this is shown at the end of the chapter. Yoru starts to stumble over the word death, and there's a lot of extra question marks in there, which when you're reading the chapter might not even matter. You might just fly through it and not even care. But she stumbles on the word death in an oddly way, and then it's reiterated death in quotations, almost like she's forgetting or not remembering what death is. And her facial expressions, I think, is proof of that. You see her go through this angry expression, nervous to unsure. She's a bit confused about what she's even talking about. However, the final page reinforces that she does remember her older sister, but perhaps not death itself. It kind of depends. She can easily remember what death is, but it might be different. That's the thing. And this is what leads into the whole new world, quote unquote. Pochita is not a, let's say, linear being. The things that he does, the beings that he erases, the concepts and ideas that no longer exist are not linear. And what I mean by that, when I say that they're not linear, is that there is no right or wrong or simple answer to what may or may not happen if something gets erased. The story has given us a couple examples, but I'll give you one here. Death is erased. So naturally, you would think that people cannot die and that immortality or just constant aging would exist. That can be technically true. However, because Pochita is not linear, he doesn't really make sense. Death can find its way within many forms, and it can change and mold just based on its erasure. So it may not be the same death that currently exists, but a version of it will exist within the world, just not the same way. way. It's very weird how it works because some things will have it to the extreme and other things won't. I can take you back to the beginning of Chainsaw Man's story where we find out that there is multiple versions of death and afterlife. Pochita has erased many versions of it before, and it makes you ask the question, why? Why would Pochita erase different versions of death or afterlife or even other certain things that seem fundamental to humans operating? Is it a personal thing that he chooses, which could possibly be, or is it something out of spite? Is it something to stop the Four Horsemen doing what they're trying to do now, but before? Really, what I'm trying to say in simple terms is that Pochita is broken and he doesn't really make sense. Just because death has been erased doesn't mean death doesn't exist. It sounds confusing, but there should theoretically be a different version of it. But when it comes to New World, Pochita seems to have an idea on how to create that, and we've talked about this. This has been a theory that I've talked about, that a lot of people have talked about pretty much since the beginning of Chainsaw Man's story, that there is a possibility where you could pretty much equalize both humans and devils, concepts, blah blah blah, so they no longer have like a tier system. So devils, humans, and hybrids kind of coexist without the need of potentially being a representation of a human concept. Does that make sense? For example, Pochita and the hybrids. We do not know the original purpose of the hybrids. We don't know why that they're merged with humans. We don't know why the names of them have been erased. We don't know why Pochita erased versions of himself and instead picked up typical chainsaw descriptions. What does that tell you? One, there's no real hard logic, quote unquote, but two, perhaps Pochita has tried to do this before. The existence of hybrids is funny, and fundamentally it just shouldn't really work the way that it does. Humans and devils coexisting within the same body, but both of them are sentient? Sounds kind of odd. Contracts, I get. Fiends, I get. Hybrids seem odd, which goes into a much bigger conversation about potentially them being tools of the Horsemen or offspring of the Horsemen, or perhaps even something else entirely to help balance out the universe. What if we just take out the balance? What if we just get rid of all of the things that make things scary and powerful and just exist? Plain mundane world where perhaps death in its form is not normal, but still kind of technically exists, where devils, humans, hybrids, fiends, and whatever else are equaled out so they don't have this ridiculous amount of power, and maybe the worlds just kind of all merge together. That would be the New World, happiest of endings, but it is never really that simple.